Well, hello, welcome back to the show, folks. We are hitting episode 5 today, the same as every week prior. All episodes will be down below in the description. If you haven't checked them out already, please head over and check out what On Air is all about. Now, today's episode has been brought to us by the Earth 2 podcast. The same as always, there'll be a little bit in the middle of the video explaining what the Earth 2 podcast is, where and how you can listen. An absolute fantastic local podcast that covers quite a lot of everyone's favourite DC characters. Today, I have had the absolute pleasure of sitting down and speaking with Rob Williams. Rob Williams, of course, the man behind Old Haunts. He's also worked on Judge Dredd, The Suicide Squad, my personal favourite, Roy of the Rovers. Roy was such a huge part of my childhood growing up, so it was an absolute pleasure getting the chance to sit down and talk with Rob. So without further ado, welcome to On Air with FPI. Rob, thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, good, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, all good.
I imagine your schedule's quite busy, so thank you again for being on the page today. But if you could just give the viewers just a wee brief introduction to yourself and your career.
My name's Rob Williams. I'm a comic and TV writer. I mean, but mainly comics over the years. And I guess in recent years, I'm best known for a lot of my work on Judge Dredd. I wrote the Small House graphic novel and the Control graphic novel, End of Days. And aside from that, I've done a bunch of work for companies like DC. I wrote Suicide Squad for a few years, and I've written for Marvel Comics. I've written creator-owned books like Old Haunts came out fairly recently from AWA, and which is one of mine. And I've written lots over the years, too much, many people would say. Yeah. Oh, and I've been working on the Judge Dredd TV show as well, doing some development work on that, which was announced a couple of years ago, I think. So that's quite exciting too.
It's very exciting. That's fantastic. You've mentioned something that's gave you the fear on your Twitter.
Yeah.
Can you...
Yeah, I'm not. No, not at all.
No.
It's one of those things where when you do this job, sometimes something gets, oh, would you like to do this? From someone you can't believe you would ever be lucky enough to say that to you.
Okay.
And you get the excitement. Your immediate reaction is oh my God, that's amazing, fantastic. And then you get really excited, and it lasts about 2 minutes, and then it's immediately replaced by terror, basically. Wow. Which is, well, now you've got to, do the work and pitch, come up with the stories and the characters that are going to fit that. It's one thing for someone to go, would you like to, if someone walked up to you today and went, we'd like you to write the next Star Wars film, you would kind of go, it's amazing, of course you're going to say yes. And then 2 seconds later you go, oh my God.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it was one of those, but I mean, but then you get on with it, and you sort of, you do the work, and fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Growing up, what would you say was your biggest inspiration to move into the world of writing?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know if there was. I can't say there was one, to be honest with you. It's just growing up, I loved reading, and I loved reading comics, and I loved reading books, and it was, my head was always in a book or a comic of some kind. So I guess it was that. I mean, it was just, I loved the Marvel DC comics when I was a kid. I read 2000 AD, which I still write for today, and I read get Roy Over Rovers every week, and I write Roy Over Rovers graphic novels today, which is pretty amazing. I love Lord of the Rings, the Tolkien books, and Enid Blyton, and just all sorts. So, I mean, I don't think there was one inspiration. I mean, if there was one sort of whatever you want to call it, sort of a life changer, I guess you could say it was reading Alan Moore's work at a certain age. I mean, but that didn't make me go, oh, I want to do this, because it just seemed impossible to do that for a long time. I mean, it was just whoever these people were who wrote comics, they were, geniuses who lived a million miles away, from I grew up in the South Wales valleys in the 70s and 80s, as sort of quite a small industrial area. There's no comic shops. All this stuff happened a billion miles away. So I think it was just over time. I always knew I wanted to write, because frankly it was about the only thing I was ever good at. And I thought, well, I'll be a journalist. I trained to be a journalist. I still had no plans or dreams really of being a comic writer. But then I was working as a journalist at some point, about my mid-20s, late 20s. And I thought, I'll just write a comic script and I'll see how it goes, because I'd never tried. But it still just seemed like, that's something that like people like Stan Lee and John Byrne did, and they obviously lived in New York City, and so it just didn't seem like a possible path. So it was not something I ever chased until I came to all this really quite late, I think.
Okay, great. And looking at your career, so let's not look at it as a job for a second. Would you say you have any type of like personal gain from creating, like writing these stories, creating these worlds?
Yeah, I'm at the risk of going down a wanky road. I think it is an artistic expression. You are stuff that is coming out of you. You are working stuff out, whether you mean to or not. I don't know if you sort of go into it, any story you're writing, and thinking this is going to help me deal with this issue. But I think I'm really a big believer in theme in stories. I think even sometimes you go in and you're going to go, well, this is what this story is about, and it's about this. And sometimes, very often, about 3/4 of the way through, you'll kind of go, no, it's not about that at all. And I can see these issues for me coming out through the stories. So in that sense, I guess it's a bit of a learning experience. It's absolutely, it's kind of, it's too easy to talk about it as a form of therapy, but it's because half the time writing for a living will cause you to need to go for therapy, let alone actually sort of make you healthier. But all kinds of stuff comes out, and it's absolutely, that's one of the fascinating things about it, I think.
Fantastic. And do you, perhaps you haven't come across it yet, so if you haven't, that's a good enough answer, but would you say you have any form of writer's kryptonite?
It's kryptonite. What, things are just every day.
Okay.
It's writer's kryptonite. There's many forms of writer's kryptonite that'll be put in your path. Sometimes it's by publishers. Sometimes it's by yourself. Writer's kryptonite. I mean, it's just always. It's not always hard. That's not true. I mean, sometimes you kind of go. Here's what doesn't happen, I would say, right? That image of sort of like, oh, this story just downloaded itself into my head, fully formed, like the Matrix or something, where they just sort of like, that happens once in a billion years. For me, anyway. I can't speak for anyone else. Maybe there's geniuses out there who just kind of go, I've got it all. Yeah. I mean, it's a process, and you try and it's work. And I think once you have been doing it for a while, some of the structures and some of the rules, even if you haven't quite got it, you can usually kind of knock it into shape, and you can get a path through something to work it out. I think it's more like you're more like a craftsman, really. It's more like being a carpenter or something. Basic things need to work a certain way to stand up, or they're just all going to fall apart. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes things don't work. Even you can have the best intentions in the world, and you can come away from a story kind of going, it doesn't quite do what I wanted it to do. Writer's kryptonite. Yeah, too many. Self-doubt is a writer's kryptonite. You just got to bash your way through these things, but it's there is a lot of writer's kryptonite out there. Trust me.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of things that you read when you were growing up. You didn't, have the big boom, that's inspired me.
Yeah.
Outside of comics, what type of a reader would you say you are? Are you a guy that follows genres or certain authors, or certain eras?
No. I like to think I'm a very sort of like disparate reader, and I think that's healthy. I think if you stick to one genre, and you write, you're going to be quite a derivative. Your stuff's going to be quite derivative. I think it's really useful to sort of read from all kinds of genres and just pick from different things, because those are your influences. But I mean, I got a point when I got a few years ago. I think this happens to a lot of people. I became aware, and maybe it was because I was writing fiction all the time, but pretty much all I was reading was non-fiction, and I thought, well, that's not great. And it's really refreshing when you read a piece of fiction which actually just grabs you and carries you along. No, I read. What do I read? I mean, I read a lot. World War II history books. I read sports biographies. I like a fantastic. Best book I read in a few years, but I enjoyed most was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, who wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell previously. That was amazing. And I'm sort of, comic wise, I'm just, what am I reading right now? I've just been rereading. I went back and rereading BPRD from the start, basically. And fortunately, my memory's terrible. So I had forgotten 90% of what happened in it originally. And it's just fantastic. I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, it's like, I read manga. I read, lots. Not as much. No, I've got 2 kids, so nowhere near as much as I would like to. I will say that as well.
I have seen that take a plummet as well, and obviously I'm not a writer, but my reading has plummeted when my son was born.
It does, and it's just. I mean, now I read in. My partner can't stand this, but I read in the bath. Because I can shut the door and I get like 20 minutes of just like, no, I'm just here with a book. And because if I try and read before I go to bed, I'll get 2 pages in and I'm just gone.
Yeah. I can't even read in front of the kids at all, because my daughter now, she sees a cat in absolutely everything. So for example, I was reading one of your Roy the Rovers yesterday, and she came up and she was pointing at the tiger and she was going, "Oh, a cat."
See, that's the hidden themes we were getting in there were all cat based. Yeah, so she picked up on that.
So speaking from my point of view to your point of view, you have written for quite a lot of my favorites. Like Old Haunts has literally just crept in. All of the AWA stuff I've became such a mark for. I've been collecting that since the start. Old Haunts, perfect book. You've also done things like Roy of the Rovers, your Suicide Squads, your Judge Dredds. Would you say there is a particular character or a particular comic that you still feel like you want to have a proper crack at?
No, not really in sort of the big I've been really fortunate, and over the years I've written a lot of the big iconic characters like your Supermans and your Spider-Mans. I as a fanboy, I still have little moments where I kind of go, they're few and far between these days, but they do happen where I kind of go, no, I'd love to have a go at the Fantastic Four or something like that. Because I've written them in sort of guest appearances in a few Marvel comics, but I've never sort of But then I kind of go back the other way and I go, do you know what? In my heart of hearts, I'm not sure I'm the perfect writer for the Fantastic Four anyway.
Okay.
So it's possibly best to leave, even if it were offered to, that might not be but sometimes the fanboy in you and the professional in you sort of, have two different voices. I don't know. I mean, it's just I recently I sort of out of the blue I came up with a cool story for Daredevil, and I kind of thought, I don't think I've ever written Daredevil, and I thought I got quite a little bit excited by that and pitched it, and just I don't think it went anywhere. But that happens. But I think the days of me kind of going, I want to write, I don't know, Silver Surfer or something, are kind of behind me. But I think if I come up with a cool story where I think, well, I could tell that and that'd be fun and I'd enjoy that, then yeah, great, I'll pitch it. But I think when you get into this and you want to work for Marvel and DC, you are very much, I want to do that. It's for toys, it's a toy shop, you know what I mean? And I think that's I don't know, been beaten out of me over the years, maybe a little.
Yeah.
But it does pop up every now and again.
Okay.
Hey everybody, my name is Kovex, Twitch streamer, TikToker, social media influencer, and now proud owner of Beard Demon, Sinfully Good Beard Care. It all started off as, just a trial and error thing to make, some beard butters and stuff for myself, because I am a bearded man. And from there, I started, making some for friends who enjoyed them. And then I thought, this is something I could do, My friends like them, I like them. Why not share it with a wider variety of people so I could actually give back in a way to my community that I've grew on TikTok, Instagram, Twitch. And that's how Beard Demon came about. We have a 7 Deadly Sins collection at the moment, which obviously ranges from envy, wrath, lust, all different smells, all different profiles, which I'm really proud of. We're now branched out into our oils and our beard washes, and soon we're going to be having our full grooming kits, which is going to consist of a butter, an oil, our brand new Himalayan cedarwood and tea tree beard wash, which is amazing, and you get yourself a nice wooden comb and a pair of scissors to trim your moustache and stuff. It's the full grooming kit for, as a present for one of your loved ones or a friend. I'm really proud of it. Check us out. All our links will be down below. Check us out on Etsy. Check us out on all social medias. Beard Demon Shop, Beard Demon on Etsy, Beard Demon Shop, and everything else. I'd really appreciate it. Stay awesome, guys.
Hi David, how are you?
Oh, Peter, man, I've been better. I'm really fed up and depressed, I can't lie.
What's wrong? What's been happening?
Man, I'm just really dissatisfied and really down as far as fulfilling my podcast needs right now.
What exactly are you looking for?
Maybe a DC Comics podcast?
Yeah, there's plenty of those.
Yeah, I know, but I need one that...
Chronicles the origins and the development of the DC Comics multiverse from before Flash of Two Worlds through to Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, exactly that. And maybe something else as well that factored in the importance and the legacy of DC Comics Golden Age characters throughout the Silver Ages and Bronze Ages of comics.
That sounds epic.
It does sound epic. It sounds exactly the sort of podcast that I would listen to.
Shall we just do it ourselves then?
In many ways, we have the same mind. That's a great idea.
Fortunately, it just so happens I've built this handy transmatter cube.
That's perfect. Will that take us to Earth 2?
It'll take us to all of the multiverse.
Fantastic. Right then, what are we waiting for?
Let's go.
Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
The Earth 2 Podcast.
Check out our website at theearth2podcast.com.
You can find us on all the social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram as the Earth 2 Podcast, and you can find us on Twitter, podcast_Earth2. Join us, and we'll see you around the multiverse.
Is it still to come, or is there anything that you would consider to be your magnum opus?
It's weird. I don't really think in those terms.
Okay.
I think it would put too much. Yeah, that would terrify me. I don't know. I've got things I'm proud, things I've done in the past which I'm really, really proud of, and other things which didn't hit quite as well. I don't really. Yeah, that's a weird one. I think if I had to give someone one book of mine and kind of and kind of go, look, here's me. I think Unfollow was a book I did from Vertigo, which I think there's 3 trade paperbacks of, which is a social media thriller.
Mm-hmm.
That might be one I might give to people. I did a create your own book called Ordinary for Titan. I have little niggles on those 2 as well, because they're both a little too condensed, unfortunately. And Follow, we had sort of vague plans to make that run to about 50 issues, 45 issues. And then Vertigo said, no, we had to shut it down with 18 issues. So, but in terms of those characters and the voice of the piece and things like that, I mean, I think that's that's one that I would put front and center, I think. But there's all kinds of things. I mean, like I say, Old Haunts came out this year, and in trade, and that's just a beautiful, if nothing else, a beautiful tonal book. And I think you find that you have certain things, like my Suicide Squad run, I think is just really good fun. You know what I mean? Just
and it reads that way as well.
Yeah, and that was what it was meant to be. Yeah. It was meant to be sort of a punk rock song put to music, put in comic form. This is why the first few run of it was every issue was had a Ramones song title. Deliberately there was a sort of like a statement of intent about this. This is what this stuff is supposed to be. And there's things like The Small House from Judge Dredd, where I just think in terms of plotting, that's a pretty tight. That's about as good as I get in terms of. I felt like I did a good job there with the plot inside of things. So there's loads of different things, and you'll take something from all of them, but I don't know if there's one where I go, that's my Moby Dick. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. When you were first contacted by Rebellion to revamp Roy of the Rovers, because you said you read that when you were younger. I think everybody that reads comics has pretty much read, or anybody that liked comics and football has read Roy of the Rovers. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my grandparents about Roy of the Rovers literally last week, and I had mentioned that I was going to be speaking with you, and my granddad, he was like, "Oh, well, going to ask him if he's ever going to shoot Roy."
We're not shooting Roy again. But that was my era, right? That was like when I was getting it weekly. That was, I remember, Who Shot Roy Race was kind of like, who could it be? There was some actor in the end. Spoilers, spoilers for the early '80s. It was just like that was random. But there was a lot of random in Roy of the Rovers in the '80s. I think there was an earthquake under Mel Park at one point as well. It was. Yeah, I did genuinely get it weekly as a kid, and read it as a kid, and read those stories, and read The Hard Man and Mighty Mouse and all those. So it was one of those when they asked me to do it, and I think the reason they asked me to do it was twofold. One was I was doing Judge Dredd and things like that for 2000 AD, so I knew the guys involved. And two was they genuinely probably couldn't think of a single comic writer in Britain who also liked football apart from me. It's a very small kind of capsule area to grab from. But yeah, but I do. I'm a big I'm a really big football fan, and so it's kind of like a dream job. But then what we tried to do was kind of go, right, we wanted to revamp it for kids, and it's a young adult comic. It's we didn't just want to go down that road of appealing to the older fans who read it. Yeah. So we tried to do that, and so Roy's 17 in it, and he's starting out on his journey, and Melchester Rovers are kind of like, imagine if, I don't know, sort of Manchester United had fallen on financial hard times and gone down 3 divisions, and the ground was now falling apart. And so because the club, this giant club, has no money left, they have to turn to the kids. So it's Roy and his mates, basically. But then we started sort of filtering in a lot of the older characters, like Mighty Mouse and Johnny Dexter and Hotshot Hamish. So we're trying to kind of tick both boxes. So if you're a old school fan, you're going to see these characters and go, oh my God, and love seeing them again. Yeah. But there's slightly, I mean, I think a little bit of a model for it was what the Ultimate Spider-Man, for me, what the Ultimate Universe, what Marvel did with that, where basically these are the characters and love, and they feel like the same characters, but we're just starting fresh, you know what I mean, revamping the universe. But no, it's just it's a blast, and we've been doing it a few years now, and it's really fun. And this sounds wrong, right? But it's easy to write, and I think part of the fact that it's easy to write is because it just it just flows, and it's sometimes you can get, as a writer, you can overcomplicate things, you can get way too clever and be your own worst enemy. I think because of the nature of what Roy of the Rovers is, and that we're writing for a young adult audience, you condense everything, you simplify everything, and it's just soap opera basically, and I've really enjoyed writing it.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to jump onto a small part here. For every interview, I like to ask the Glasgow store below me if they have any questions for my interviewee, and I have 4 replies back. One of them you've kind of already answered, so I do apologise, Cameron. Cameron has asked, is there any characters that you have always wanted to work on but haven't had the chance to yet?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I've got a Daredevil story in my back pocket if Marvel ever come knocking. I don't know. There are a few, but I mentioned Silver Surfer. The moment I said that, I went, do you know, I don't think I've ever written the Silver Surfer, so that'd be fun. So there's a few that still, niggle, that I'd like to have a go at.
We have one from Derek here. Derek has asked, is there a particular artist that you have worked with and clicked with immediately?
Yeah, there's a few actually. I mean, I've been ludicrously lucky over the years to kind of the artists I've worked with. I mean, the ones you click with is kind of. I mean, I think there's people who are just absolute geniuses, frankly, and I don't know if I just click with them or they just geniuses whoever they work with. So I mean, like me and Henry Flint have done a lot of work together on Judge Dredd's Small House. And the End of Days, and we did Low Life before that, and we did the Judge Dredd Titan. And Henry's just an absolute genius, and whatever you give him, whether it's the personal moments of a little character beats or the big ludicrous crazy cosmic action stuff, he can do it all. Lawrence Campbell is just who did Old Haunts, and Lawrence and I have worked together a bunch of years, and he's one of my best mates. Lawrence just does mood just brilliantly. His storytelling is fantastic. Chris Weston, who Chris and I did the Judge Dredd Control graphic novel. Chris is sort of he's like the modern era Brian Bolland for me. So I feel very fortunate to get to work with him. And then I sort of, my DC stuff, I got to work with people like Jim Lee, which was just like, you could have knocked me over the cricket bat when that was offered, Johnny Romita Jr., who just, Jim and Johnny Romita, I got to work with Walt Simonson. These guys have just been doing it for decades on a kind of like absolute heroic level. I mean, whether or not I click, the question was whether you click with them. I don't know about that per se, but it's just like those guys are just amazing artists. You just sort of, and then there's people like someone like Disraeli, who I did Low Life for 2000 AD for years, and we did Ordinary together. And I genuinely think I can't think of a more underrated comic artist who's just so brilliant. I mean, it's just like, he's the standard of his work is just absolutely extraordinary. And and I think, possibly some of the best work I ever did has been with Disraeli as well. So it's weird. Sometimes you absolutely click with people. I mean, I'll give you one example with the clicking thing is, we only did 2 issues together of Suicide Squad. There's a guy, I'll mispronounce his name and I apologize. It's Stepjan Sejic. I don't know if you know his work. He does, he did a Harley Quinn graphic novel recently for DC. He came in, did 2 sort of almost like guest issues of Suicide Squad, and immediately just kind of went, oh, it just felt like our stuff just went bunk like that. So yeah, I love to do, that happens sometimes. And also it goes the other way as well. Sometimes new artists come in and you do not click at all, and it doesn't work together at all. So you just can't predict, really.
I have a question here from Andrew. He says, the Nomad story you did for the Dark Horse Star Wars, would you like to see this adapted for TV or similar? If so, would you like it to be animated or live action?
Wow. Okay, that's going back a bit. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be a blast. I mean, it's to see it adapted. It's just, I mean, live action, of course. That was like, I tell you what, the highlight of that for me. I mean, I worked with Dustin Weaver on that. Dustin's an amazing artist. But for some reason, and I genuinely can't remember why, I think I was crazy at the time, when I was writing Star Wars for Dark Horse, we made some kind of decision with the editor that Han Solo and Millennium Falcon were off doing other things. So I did this run, and Han and Chewie and the Falcon weren't really in it. But I got to write like the Millennium Falcon in that, and Han and Chewie, and I just had like, why did we not have them in everything? They're so much fun. So apart from that, live action, please. All the money, biggest budget in the world, fantastic.
Perfect. And Gary does this for every interview so far. He likes to get the people ready for the second part of the interview, so he likes to have you thinking on your feet. Gary asks, how would you have moved Stonehenge?
How would I have moved Stonehenge? Oh my God. What a Robocop. First off, Dredd is just going to shoot Robocop through the face for stealing his entire shtick and all his best lines.